That's kind of what we're doing. First things first, let's get all the packages set up. So I have my Playmaker package, which I'll import. So Kaboom's actually a good example. It's a good game to try to make first. Once we're done with Kaboom, we're actually going to make an Angry Birds clone. Hopefully you guys are familiar with Angry Birds, like a huge franchise for iPhone and Android. Pretty simple games too to make. And these aren't, it's unfortunate because we're making clones, so there's not too much flexibility at first, but you guys can totally make these games your own after we do the first couple of weeks on it. So you can add your own custom rules, you can modify the gameplay however you want to. You change it to be your own personal kind of game. All right. I'm also going to import in the prototyping package. Just because that tends to be useful, has some assets in it. Along with a Playmaker object package, which just has some materials in it that I want to use. Okay, so first things first, I want to get the character moving. So here's our scene. As usual, we don't really have much in our scene yet, so we're just going to go ahead and create a plane, like so. And I'm going to use a capsule today to represent the character. And let's just reset the plane here. I want to be on the ground. And there's our capsule, which is the player. I want him to be on the ground too, so let's just raise him up. In addition, I'm going to rename this thing to be GO_player for game object player. And let's just set up a very simple FSM on this guy that lets me move him around in the scene. I'm going to position the camera right, I'm going to position the camera right here. So just to play, obviously there's nothing I can do to move the character around. So very simple, you guys have done this already. We're going to edit the FSM, and we're just going to have this one FSM just be for moving. And I have this all in the lab as well. So get axis vector. I'm kind of going fast here because we have a lot of stuff to cover, but you guys have done this already. So I'm creating a new input variable, storing it here. I'm going to make the movement relative to the camera as well. And then I don't need another state. I'm just going to have him do controller simple move using input. And I see this warning. I'm going to click that to get rid of that. And that's pretty much all it takes. Now I can have a character that can move left and right. Oh, I accidentally put the script on the camera, so the camera's moving. So we're going to actually copy this and put him on the player instead. And get rid of it on the camera. I really don't want the camera to move. Okay, let's try this again. Oh, and one other thing, this thing does not need a character controller. And let's just double check our script here. Main camera, input, get axis vector. Let's just multiply it by 5. That's Luke, everyone. Everyone's say hi to Luke. This is Luke. Luke, we're just getting into the lab, so we're just about to start. So yeah, I'm getting the character moving. Let me just run this and make sure that I got everything set up properly. That's the player. And okay, something broke when I actually added this thing. There we go. So I really just want a guy that can move left and right, because that's kind of what our Kaboom clone is going to do. It's basically just going to do this. So I just want to get that lab out of the way. So secondly, I want to have something that represents the bomb that spawns from the sky. So I'm going to have a sphere represent that. This sphere is kind of just doesn't have any behavior right now, but we're going to add some ability for it to fall. So the first thing first, let's just have it have a rigid body component that has gravity. The idea here is that if I press play, it should just fall by itself, like so. That's kind of the behavior that we just want by default. We just want this thing to fall. And then what we can do is let's just stick a material on there. We can do this. And we can also add an FSM because I kind of want this thing to act as a trigger. So if it drops on top of the player, I'm actually just going to have it fall on the player by default. I want to kind of hit the player and then disappear. Right? Right now it hits the player and then rolls off, which is what I expect. So let's set this guy up as a trigger. And this ball is going to have a very simple state in here. It's going to say waiting for player, trigger event. You guys have done this as well a bunch of times, so hit player. Going to send that event that hits the player, and all we're going to do is destroy ourselves. So we're going to call destroy object, and we're going to pass in ourselves. I'm going to use this opportunity to rename this thing as well. I'm going to name it the bomb. Hit the player and then go to destroy. All right. Again, this is all in the lab, so it should play, hits the player, and then goes away. Okay. One more thing we're going to do is I kind of want to only hit the player and go away. Like if I move this thing and I have it hit the ground, I don't really want it to go away when it hits the ground by itself. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to tag the player specially so that it only cares about collision with the player. So I'm going to go to the player and make sure that he's tagged as the player. Go to the bomb. And this trigger event here, you can ask for who you care about, which we've done as well. So I'm just going to care about the player in this case. And that is just because we're going to be spawning a bunch of these bombs. These bombs are actually going to be colliding with the spawner as well as the ground and possibly even the walls, but we only care about if the player actually touches it, because that's the only case that we actually want the player to be able to give credit for. Okay. So let's move the ball on top of the player again. Use my trick here. Just raise it up. Okay, cool. So there's our ball, right? It's a very simple mechanic. This is actually just two things that you've already done before, but now you can start to see like, oh, that's the main mechanic of Kaboom, right? You stand under this ball, the ball goes away, right? Kind of makes sense. Any questions so far on this stuff? Okay, so now we're going to do something which we haven't actually done yet, which is I want to talk a little bit about how to make things like Kaboom, that like a spawner that creates this ball. Right now we can place a bunch of these around, right? We can place multiple balls in our level, and all of them will fall. But that's kind of not how Kaboom works. Kaboom works by spawning them dynamically. It spawns them while the game is actually running. So in order to do that, we're actually going to have to take this ball, instead of placing it in a level, we actually need to be able to create this very ball while the game is running. And the best way to do that is by taking this ball and making a prefab out of it. So I kind of briefly talked about prefabs, but they're like super important for any kind of real game development you want to do. And prefabs are a great way to basically be able to make a blueprint for something and reuse that blueprint however many times you want. And what's great is that you can make a prefab and you can change something in that prefab and it'll affect everything that you've placed already in the level. So it's a really fast way to basically stamp out multiple copies of something and have the change propagate. It's funny, actually, Luke you made the prefab system for Overwatch, right? I did. How hard was that to make?
It was pretty difficult.
Pretty difficult, yeah. What was difficult about it, would you say?
You just have to support a lot of different things.
There's a lot of hidden features, right?
A lot of hidden features, yeah.
But Luke, like all I have to do to make a prefab in Unity is just go make a prefabs folder and literally just drag and drop. How is that so hard, man? I'm just kidding. It's actually super complicated. So the thing is, now that I've made this thing a prefab just by dragging it from here into the folder, you can kind of tell the ball's actually colored slightly differently. It's actually a darker blue. And I can just drag this prefab into the level. And as I said before, if I wanted to do something in here to change the behavior of this prefab, I can click on the prefab itself here, or I can click on the objects in the level and I could change it. So for instance, let's just say if I want to change the scale of these balls, right? I can go here, and I can go and look at the scale of this ball next to this one. I'm just going to put them next to one another. I'm going to scale this guy down to be like 0.2, like be a super tiny ball, right? So there's a little baby ball. What if I want all the balls to be that way? Well, here I've changed one of the balls I've placed, right? Well, there's these three buttons up top now that show up when an object is part of a prefab. You can select the prefab itself, you can revert the instance of the prefab to be different, or you can click this button, apply, which will take the changes you made to this instance of the prefab and apply it to everything else. So I click apply, and then everything else changes to be super tiny, right? If I want to scale it up again, notice that I can change one property of the prefab. They're still all the same prefab, only this one has one property that's different. If I want to apply it, I can just click on apply it to every single one. Also, I can just click on the prefab down here, and I can change the scale here, and this will automatically propagate to all of them in the level. So notice here, as I'm changing, they all kind of change, right? So if I change the prefab here, it'll automatically apply those changes to everything. So if I wanted to say, like, have the gravity not be turned on and have these things just float, they would just work that way too, which would not make for a very fun game. Questions on prefabs?
So if you were to change the name to like Go Square,
in the prefab, it doesn't change the name of the prefab. Only the one that like actually shares the same name. Notice these two are actually still bomb
yeah,
1,
that's
bomb
what I
2.
mean. So if you were to change one of those to like a different name, it wouldn't change when you.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, this would be like carry. Right. So notice nothing else changed, and even if you click apply, nothing else changes, right? These are instances of the prefab. These things are basically copies of the prefab itself. I moved it to the ground here. These are copies of the prefab itself, and you can change anything on the prefab. What's really nice is that you can even do things like, oh, I can add components, or I can change the FSM behavior, right? Maybe I want this thing to like spin randomly when it spawns, which I can do by changing it just in the prefab here. So a prefab is also important because a prefab is the only way you can spawn something in Playmaker dynamically. So I have these bombs here. So I have these 3 things here. I'm actually, now that I've made these as a prefab, I'm actually just going to delete them. I don't need them in the level. I have this thing here, right? So I can always just make more copies of the original ball if I want to. So I don't actually need to place them in the level at all. Make sure you don't ever delete the original prefab, though. That would be bad. So what I want to do is I kind of want something in the level that acts as a spawner. So let's just have a cube act as a spawner for now. This thing is going to represent our spawner. Beautiful. Gave it a green material. Cool. And by default, these materials from Playmaker are not casting shadows, so you can turn on the shader to be a standard shader, and it'll actually make it so it actually takes in light. So this is going to represent our spawner, so I'm going to name it as such. And what I want to do is I want to set up the spawner so when I hit the space bar, it'll create those balls for me. And eventually, it'll make those balls by themselves. So I'm going to add an FSM to this thing. And this is going to be in the lab. So here's also something that's really important. Now that I have the spawner, I'm actually going to add a bunch of FSM soon. So I'm going to actually name this FSM something that I can tell the difference between the other ones I'm going to add. So this thing is going to handle the spawning. So that's what I'm going to name this one. It's actually pretty important. It's going to be really important once you add 2 or 3 more of these. All right, so I just named that thing spawning. And I just want to set up something so if I hit the space bar, it's gonna spawn them. So I'm going to call this state waiting for spawn. I'm going to make another state that's called spawn. And I'm going to make an event that says go ahead and spawn. And really, I'm just going to add transition here to go from here to here. And then when it's done, I'm going to have it go back. This is our state machine. It's a 2-state state machine, really simple. And basically, I'm going to have this state machine handle a key. So there's an action called get key down that you can use. And it's nice because it gives you all these keys you can listen for. So I'm going to have spacebar be the one that I care for. And when spacebar is hit, I'm going to send the event that says go ahead and spawn. Okay. So now I'm going to play. I'm going to watch this state machine. So now if I hit spacebar, notice the state is actually changing every time I hit space. It's going into the spawn state. And then finally, the only thing I need to do left is create an object. So there's an object, there's a create object action in Unity. You can add this guy here. And this thing takes 2 important parameters. 1, what do you want to spawn, which is the game object. And 2, where do you want to spawn it, which is the spawn point. You also have the option of specifying a spawn position if you want to actually type in numbers here or you have a variable that you want to choose. In this case, though, the thing I'm going to spawn is that prefab I made earlier. So I'm just going to drag that prefab from the folder into here. You can also use the picker here if you want. The little picker will show up and you can pick the ball from here. I didn't mean to name this thing square. It's supposed to be a bomb. Just going to name that again. So I dragged the bomb in there. And then the spawn point, I can actually just drag the spawner here. I just want it to spawn wherever the spawner is. All right, so I'm going to hit play. And now if I hit spacebar, every time I hit spacebar, it spawns more balls, right? So I can go here, and I can move the camera here. So that's the basics of it, and I can stand under it, and I'll collect all of them. And that's kind of the basic mechanic of Kaboom, right? You have something that creates an object. Now all we have left to do is just move that spawner left and right, and have it spawn automatically, and we're kind of all halfway there to make a Kaboom clone in like less than an hour. So I kind of want you guys to do labs number 1 through 4, which is the basically what I just did, including the level. And then once you guys done with labs 1 through 4, we'll move on to lab number 5, which is moving it and also spawning things randomly. Okay, so get to this point and also make a level.